Bore da pawb a croeso cynnes iawn i'r bwrdd heddiw. We've not got any apologies for absence. I do apologise for being a few minutes late. We have just come out of an in-committee session of the board this morning. So, are there any interests to be declared that are not already declared that are pertinent to today's substantive agenda? No, thank you very much. The first thing is to go through the draft minutes of the board meeting held on the 26th of January. So just for accuracy initially, page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7, page 8, page 9, page 10, page 11, and page 12.
Sorry, going back to page 6.
Yeah.
This is utterly trivial, but it's that 1, 2, 3, 4th paragraph from the bottom. The arrangement of attractiveness bursary package. Just missing it off. Just to show I've read it.
Thank you so much.
And actually, there's an extra S on the end of the following line.
Okay, can we please insert the relevant of? Okay. Are there any other omissions or alterations anybody wishes to make? Will you allow me to sign these off in terms of accuracy? Yes. Thank you. If you can just jump now to the action log. Are there any actions left undone or need to be updated? No? So we'll go back now into the minutes, and I'm taking matters arising that have not been covered by the action log or are not on today's substantive agenda. So page 1, page 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You content for me to sign these off? Yes. Thank you very much. We now go to agenda section 2, and first is the chair's report. It was a really good launch of Training Work Live Dental, and in fact it's a sort of parable for dealing with the challenges that we have in securing a pipeline into the NHS and care services for the future. It was a true partnership event. It was hosted by Cwmtaf Morgannwg Health Board. There were many staff involved. There was a young fellow from clinical fellow who had been involved in a piece of work, and our dental dean led, and we also had the chief dental officer of Wales there. The most impressive thing, and I would like the board members to see it, is the dental the video. It is uplifting, and it is absolutely consuming to see how enthusiastic people doing the job are about training and wanting and welcoming people to work in Wales. So that for me has been a real highlight. I've focused a lot in my report on board matters, and at the top of the list is Jonathan Morgan. So Jonathan has been with us just over a year. He's now been made chair from Saturday of Cwmtaf Morgannwg University Health Board. And I know, John, you'd want to know that we're all going to miss your wise counsel and your input here. And we wish you every success in the new venture. And don't forget your friends here. And we hope that in some ways you will be able to take advantage of this organisation's support in developing the healthcare workforce that you need.
Thank you, Chair. Very much appreciated. And whilst looking forward to the new role, I am sad to be leaving here because I've enjoyed being part of this team since January last year. And whilst leaving, not completely leaving, because I'm still within the NHS, and looking forward to articulating all of the good things that HEIW does with our health board colleagues. So you have a very strong advocate in me.
So then the other side of this is that I'm now pleased to say that the appointments process of new board members to the HEIW board is reaching the end stage. The SIP and shortlisting has occurred, interviews have happened, and recommendations have been made, and we're awaiting announcements. So that will be coming forthwith. I think it's important for people to understand how important the independent member roles are on health boards and health organisations. These are not light touch roles, and I'm really grateful to my independent member colleagues for the work they do here. And it was really driven home by what is now well known about following the report from the Audit Wales into Betsy Cadwaladr. I think the roles of independent members, it's important to identify people who are able to take up these roles and to support people within these roles. The board agenda today is very exciting and very important. Yesterday, I attended a conference on big data. And this morning I opened up the newspapers, like you all have all heard, about the threats that come with machine intelligence. And whatever happens, the world has changed with the inception of machine thinking. And it affects education, those in education and training, with people talking about having to rethink what the implications are, but also in the everyday work people do. And you will know that we are becoming much more data driven and data dependent. So there were some real lessons. And the other meeting I had yesterday was I joined colleagues from across the NHS in Wales with a confederation meeting with the Future Generation Commissioner. And in that meeting was asked a very good question, very supportive of what's happened, what's been going on and the efforts made. But this was the beginning of a much longer conversation and relationship. Two key messages he's very keen to hear at this moment as to what he should be doing, what would be helpful. And the second thing was the focus on communities and the importance of community resilience. And that included employment, included education. It was a very broad brush. So we await to be formally under the unction of the Future Generations Act, but we act in the spirit of it, and I think we are in a good position to play our role. That's all I want to say. I'm happy to take any questions, but I hope people recognise from this report the key role I think that HEIW has in the future for the sustainability of our NHS and care services. With that, I'll hand over to you. Oh yes, I've got a very helpful list of Chair's actions which I must now go to. Sorry about this. These chairs' actions they have included. The action one was taken on the 9th of March to approve the changes in respect of the governance arrangements for the procurement of energy for HEIW and joining other partners across the NHS in Wales. The details are there. The second chair's action was taken on the 9th of March to approve an invoice for Health Education England. This is a regular annual occurrence. It always comes in at the wrong time and will almost always inevitably need to have a chair's action. So that was taken there, and then again on the 9th of March we had the Welsh Government announcement that all NHS staff and NHS contracts would receive a 1.5% non-consolidated payment within the March pay. And in order to make sure that that payment got into the March pay, I'm very happy. I'm happy to say that I took chair's action to ensure that happened. So, if there are any questions, I'm sure Rhiannon will bail me out. But these chair's actions are not taken lightly. They are things that are in order to ensure business continuity for the organisation. So I'm asking if you could please approve chair's action 1 in light of the procurement of energy. Verbalise it, yeah. Chair's action 2 in light of the Health Education England payment.
Yes.
And chair's action 3 in light of the pay award.
Yes.
Thank you very much, everybody. Alex.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, my Chief Exec's report is part of the agenda, and I'm happy to take any questions on any of those items. But I just wanted to take the opportunity to update the board on a few other matters. The first is just to note that we held one of our all-staff conferences on the 16th of March. So I think we were at that one, I think, on Christmas week to attend. And that was a virtual event this time, and we dealt with a very important matter of the duty of quality and the duty of candour being introduced obviously from the 1st of April. So it's a good opportunity to raise the awareness of those important duties amongst our staff. And we also did some good working discussion on our people and OD strategy, which again I thought was really was sort of well run and well thought through, because we had some really great feedback and lots of suggestions about areas for improvement as well. So I think that was a really good way of making the people and OD strategy a bit more live rather than just perhaps a document. So I think that was a really, really good event, and we look forward to the next one in the summer. Linked with that then, on quality and candour, we've had a number of conversations amongst ourselves as execs and with our senior leadership teams to really think through how these duties will apply to us. What's clear is that they very much do, and what's clear is that quality and safety clearly need to be embedded in all of our functions as an organisation, despite the fact that we aren't a patient-facing organisation. What's not quite so clear is exactly how they apply and what processes and mechanisms we need to put in place in order to achieve that, because obviously we are a unique type of organisation with a different set of functions, so that does take some thinking through. So whereas we were intending to bring an update to the board this time, as you'll see from the matters arising in the action log, what we're proposing is that we actually have a discussion at the board development session in April. Something that would be really valuable to get independent members' views on as we think through what sort of operating model needs to be within HEIW, and certainly that will really help us, because it is conceptually quite a difficult issue, even though the principle of it is obviously easy to grasp. So we'll bring back what we hope will be an emerging quality strategy to the board development session in April time. The other item just to note is that we also hosted with colleagues from across the NHS a national diagnostic workforce conference workshop yesterday. and this reflects the establishment of the National Diagnostics Board that Welsh Government put in place under the National Diagnostics Programme, and shortly the Minister is to launch also the National Diagnostics Strategy. So we already work closely with the pathology, the imaging and the endoscopy programmes, but really this is a chance to bring all of those programmes together to look at what the consistent themes were, to understand what potential gaps were in some of those programmes from a workforce perspective, and also to consider how we now start to develop more sustainable longer term plans in these critical areas, which, as we all know, if we haven't got a good diagnostics service supporting urgent and emergency care, cancer care, planned care, and everything else we do, actually the whole show comes to a bit of a standstill. So that is an area that we're prioritising in the IOTP for next year. It was really well attended, lots of people across the NHS, despite pouring down rain and traffic problems, and we'll be repeating that through an online version of that event shortly as well, to make sure that that does inform where we're going to go over the next year or two. So something that we'll be able to bring back to the board in a formative way in the next couple of months. And just the last bit of news to also note, in the Remuneration Committee earlier this morning, the board were able to ratify the proposed appointment of Ian Jones as the new Director of Finance, Planning and Performance for the organisation. Ian will start with us in early May and hopes to come and meet all the members in April for the session. But obviously in the meantime we're very, very grateful to Leanne for her continued support and dedication to the role, which has obviously been the case since January last year, and as you'll see from the agenda today, a number of key papers and plans being brought together at a really busy time of the year. So I think on behalf of the board, I just like to thank the Leanne for so that was my additional items, but I'm happy to take any questions on any of the items in the report as well.
Rhiannon, you should know that in our discussions in the RAPS committee, your role and your help in everything you've done in this organisation is very much appreciated and recognised. Are there any comments? Any questions for Alex?
Just a quick comment about something that Alex mentioned, which is the meeting workshops with the Royal College and professional bodies. All want to see them to welcome these. I think they're really important platform for going forward, particularly in them looking to a multi or interprofessional way of working.
There was a reflection yesterday from the NHS shared by the NHS Confederation, which I'll share with board members, a record and an appreciation of that work that was done on that initial meeting and the commitment for future meetings with the Royal Colleges. I think it's a real opportunity in building our partnership approach.
Down as well, and I just wondered whether it would be possible to have the outcome of those meetings shared with the CQC on a regular basis.
Yeah. I just felt that we had an awful lot of papers. I wasn't going to send it last night, but we will send it and we'll share it.
I should just clarify that these are joint workshops with us joint them to the Royal Colleges and professional bodies. So Margaret Jackson, who the Royal College positions, is coordinating those meetings and setting the agenda and producing the notes of those meetings. So that's what we've been circulating and we will be circulating for them.
That'd be helpful because the stakeholder reference group would look out for committees that attach that.
Okay, right. So there are no more questions for Alex. We'll go into our part 3, and the first of these is the final approval of the IMTP 2023 to 26 and financial plan and budget strategy.
So yeah, I'm really pleased to be able to bring the final version of the INTP to you today. So we obviously have shared this in numerous forms over the last few months. So we discussed in September 22 the strategic framework, and we've been developing the plan ever since in collaboration with the board, our staff within HEIW, the NHS and a wider stakeholder group and Welsh Government. So the strategic framework for the INTP describes our 3 strategic aims, the 11 strategic objectives and 53 deliverables in an awful lot of detail, but we feel that they will contribute to delivery of the 7 Ps in the workforce strategy for health and social care, and improving equality, diversity, inclusion and increasing the use of Welsh language are golden threads that run throughout our plan. It's essential that we work in partnership with other organisations and other NHS bodies, and also use best practice in the digital ways of working. So over the next 3 years, we'll promote digital training as well as improving our data quality and focus on those partnerships with the education sector as well. We are acutely aware that we're in a difficult environment at the moment, so the cost of living crisis, the recent industrial action, all of that will contribute to a difficult few years, and we have to be agile in our approach and be able to respond to that changing environment as those issues and difficulties present. The financial plan is included. We have our core allocation that has been agreed. We've got papers sort of slightly withdrawn about the allocation, but the increases in commissioning budgets within the plan are as agreed for our education and training plan 23-24, and I think it's positive that Welsh Government has supported the organisation to be able to make those increases again in our commissioned levels. We have a financially balanced plan, so the INTP, as we submit it, will include a balanced plan, and that's an important point. And then in terms of next steps, so this is due for submission tomorrow into Welsh Government, and then obviously through the organisation, the departments will be developing their director-specific plans to be able to deliver all of these aims and objectives. And I know we'll come on to the refresh of the performance framework slightly later on in the agenda as well, that will help us articulate the impact and benefits that we're making through all of the activity that's included in our plan. So I would stop there. The minimum data set that has to be submitted is also included, as well as the equality impact assessment. So we're asking for approval today to be able to submit this final version of the INTP tomorrow.
It's always good at this point, because we've seen, as board members, we've seen this come through the various iterations, and I'm sure, speaking on behalf of colleagues, I'm pleased to see some of our influence in it, and also the shape on it. It looks drastically different when it first started on the journey. So, are there any questions from colleagues?
Yeah, I just certainly approve of that. The ambition within the plan it's very comprehensive. Yes, we've seen it before, but I was pleased to reread it to know that there are key themes that are coming through that plan for us as a board. So I think key is the point around quality, as well as our focus on transforming the future workforce. I think that's key, and that was the theme that I picked up, even though it talks about 17 strategic objectives, and we can quote them all. But I thought that was important, and the vision for a future workforce, to encourage it to read. I could identify with the aspiration within that. Extending our commissioning appetite and opportunities, I welcome that. That's feedback that from board development sessions. We could see that within the plan, so certainly applaud the team that some of these suggestions have been taken on, as well as a significant number of objectives and a vision around attraction and recruitment. NHS Wales. Very happy to approve the plan. My only question is, I welcome the narrative within the plan around milestones, the quarters, the timelines, it's all very clear. It also notes the integrated planning group, which would be the area that this will be scrutinised. Can I just get assurance how we as a board will have the confidence that this is on time and be delivered in terms of the expected milestones?
So I think that's through our performance framework and the performance reporting that we will bring back to on a regular basis. So I suppose what people have articulated in their templates in terms of milestones becomes the performance reporting that we take forward into the new year. And I think we've tried very much to move away from people articulating out their activity to what is the output and potentially what is the outcome. And I think when we move on to the performance framework a bit later on the agenda, the best practice is to consider those key business questions, and then can we assign key performance indicators to those. And I think that will give you added assurance that we're actually making an impact to the system as well as business and all activity.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and really welcome this. As you say, we have been on the journey with you and seen it a number of times, but I wouldn't underestimate the amount of work that goes into this. So well done for getting it to this point. There's a share John's comments about ambition. There's a lot of stuff in there, and I particularly like KPIs. I thought they were really comprehensive. So again, really good stuff. I stumble still on the enabling plans. As you know, I've asked that in the past, and I can't quite see how they work, but I'm sure that will become evident as we go through the year. So, but it's important that they link and they're not separate, I think. So I have two questions, I suppose. The first was the detail below it, the directorate's departmental plans. I'm assuming that they've been on the same timetable and that those are now pretty much ready for sign up. That's okay. I can see nods because I have this horror that that they were going to start to develop. I didn't think that for a minute. At a later stage, and then linking to the performance report. I don't really want to get. It was a question I was going to ask when we get to performance, but it does link very clearly to this, which is, I understand that we get regular reports, but they are a quarter after the quarter's happened, and that's the end of the quarter where the activities happen. So in effect, the board's 6 months behind being able to do anything about a delayed action. And I know we've spoken about whether we could have step on an informal basis earlier so that there is that ability to consider those matters. But I know the difficulty in collecting data and producing it early, but that does give us a difficulty in terms of being able to influence.
Yeah, just very quickly, Chair. Some of the points that I was going to say, I think, with both Sean and Jill, but clearly this has been a huge amount of work. I think the plan is in fantastic shape, and I think it just really conveys a sense of ambition and value and relevance of what this organisation is about. The only other point I was going to add in, I know that there is no legal requirement for there to be ministerial approval of the IMTP. However, I still think it is worth perhaps seeking a discussion with colleagues in Welsh Government where the ambition of the IMTP can be discussed with them so that people are aware, not only it's submitted to the Director General, which is also the right course of action, but I think it would be useful to pursue with some vigour a discussion with ministerial colleagues so that they understand the extent of the ambition and the delivery within this. And it's not just something that's nodded by way of recognition of submission.
it's not a widget canvas.
No.
And it's not in terms of it'll hit you in the face this year. It's what hasn't been done hits you down the track 3, 4, 5 years. And this inhibitor of not some the other face on this that I think is really important is if this isn't done, if we don't deliver this, what won't happen?
Yeah.
So it's a very complicated bit to count and watch on a sort of week by week basis. But for me, I agree with you. We need people to understand the implication of this and the implication of not doing this. And if not this, what? And there are lots of forces of change around. The economic situation isn't good, and we must make sure our partners, the health boards, the trusts, our education colleagues are really up for this, because whilst we commission this, so we're dependent on others to deliver. So I think it's a very complicated field. Bringing people together to deliver this is the art, and I think it is an art. But the minister, I'm sure, will see a lot of her priorities absolutely translated into actions.
I just want to say, I really can't fault this. I think it's actually a superb document, and the amount of work that's gone into it is really inspiring. It would be nice to see the shortened 10-page version, because actually when you still onto a page, sometimes it's sort of loses it really. It hits you and you can't get a grip on it. So that would be good. And I can't let it go without making one or two contributions, but they're very small points, and I'm very happy to give them to Gavin after the meeting.
That's all right, thank you. Yes, is that okay? To do that?
Yes, that's okay. Yes, yeah, I'm very happy to do that.
Great. Ruth and Tina?
Much of what I want to say has been said. I think there's a very strong emphasis in here on shaping culture and leadership within NHS Wales and the impact of the equality, diversity and inclusion agenda. I know we've got to step on the main part of the meeting today, but more than just words from Welsh language. And if you don't mind me saying this, one of the things is that we've had some really moving videos, presentations in Welsh language of our students across the multi-professional framework being showed at the Education Commission Equality Committee of their use of language and the impact it had on patient outcome care. There were some people talking about the inability of patients to communicate because of their condition, and then you have a student communicating or singing in Welsh or talking to them in Welsh, which then enhance the individual's understanding, and they then have a better interpretation of their illness shared with the clinicians, which affected their outcome. So I think the program that we're doing here and we're measuring makes an impact, and I think we should emphasize more of that celebration. And I was going to put it in the ECQC update. Maybe we should, in our next board meeting, have presentations of those videos, and that we should be communicating with a wider media agenda, just to show we've talked about shaping culture and leadership, but the impact that has on patient experiences is really, really good.
Tina, thank you for bringing that up, because last night I was sent the link to 3 or 4 of those videos, and I loved Mae'r iaith Cymraeg mwy bwysig. Mae'n mynd i'r calon am so fawr. It goes to the real heart of care. And the cultural approach that sat in here, throughout here, the thing about leadership and giving permissions and enabling those permissions through good education and training and allowing people to undertake their education and training through a manual is something I think we do need to celebrate and demonstrate. So that as a suite of videos, they are a parable again of what it turns out to be as a result of doing this. So I'm very grateful to your team, Lisa, for collecting them, and I think we should be using them at every opportunity. It demonstrates commitment, but it also demonstrates action.
So just to inform the board that they were very active actually, particularly getting a HEIW. So they came in actually on the forums actually from students themselves. So we actually, in a way, actually just actually shared it with HEIW what we were actually undertaking. There is a plan, and we are looking actually with our comms team because we actually need to develop them actually into a publication. And as you heard, we actually want to say that the plan is actually to in a way share that actually on an ad hoc basis of different events. So they're not completed yet, and as you say, we've actually had trouble pulling them all together. But that is the plan, and they are very, very literature, and we've been working actually with students to capture.
Don't fiddle with them too much. Don't make them too
I
hot.
think it's not about fiddling with the content. It's about it's the platform and enabling that to happen from a digital perspective.
To see it raw, that one young nurse trainee and physio trainee. My God! I mean, if you want to know how my HEIW say, then after. Okay, so
just so I think coming back to the scope of the LTP and the ambition, I suppose it's just worth noting that there are some significant unknowns at this point as we go into next year. So for me, I suppose, Jill, one of the key things is going to be actually having a conversation with the board on if we might need to change the plan either to adjust to the new demands or priorities that come across, probably more so than actually on the performance end, because I didn't see that once the actual workforce implementation order up and running. That might start to create more work when we're anticipating from obviously just having reviewed the plan, or we tried to embed that as much as possible. And we are aware that HEIW, as they go into the NHS executive on the protocol, are desperately trying to publish their long-term plan rules in NHS England. And again, we've been involved in the process of that work, but we haven't seen the final product yet, and that may add to things that we might want to consider as well. So, as with last year, where we responded to things like maternity issues, gender, and other pieces of work, I think we just spoke about voluntary, and I think the commitment has to be that we need to have that conversation with the board to make sure that the plan that you see now, you still understand the plan that you see throughout the year, and reports from it.
to get this down, is it's an achievement. It's credible and it's intelligent. But Alex, I think all the independent members would support being involved in any discussion on how to develop this plan and reflect the needs and considerations from other places. Right? So I think you've got commitment from us when you need that support or need that degree of conversation. Let's have it. Okay.
So I just want to express my gratitude to the team here, the planning team, the amazing job, and the people setting up to deliver this. So,
well, I was going to make a very kind offer when you're meeting the team next.
Straight up this or tomorrow to
I'll come and say thank you to them on behalf of the board. not easy, not an easy thing to do. IMTPs almost always lost in transit. But this is a great achievement, and well done, everybody. So we're going to do the formality about this. I take it that you're happy to approve the IMTP, including the minimum data set for submission to the Welsh Government.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm asking that you approve the equality impact assessment associated with this. Yes. Thank you very much, everybody. And we'll go on now to agenda item 3.2, which is the reservist NHS staff. Angie, are you there?
I am. Thank you, Chairman. Joch.
I can actually hear you. Excellent. Over to you.
Joch. Pnawn da pawb, and thank you for allowing me to come today. Apologies, I'm not in the room with you, but I'm absolutely delighted to share this, what I think is really exciting work with the board today. So you have a paper, and also in the appendix, you've got a copy of the original proposal and some of the costings, indicative costings. But if I just sort of give you some background and talk you through those pieces of information. So just to give you some of the background, this stemmed from a dialogue we had with Welsh Government, where the outcome was that we agreed to work up an initial proposal of what a reservist workforce for Wales would look like, or could potentially look like, and we submitted that in the autumn of last year. And we received a positive response to that, and were subsequently asked to provide a costed business case for the development and implementation of the reservist workforce. You may have seen that this has also been included in the National Workforce Implementation Plan, with a deadline for April for the submission of the business case, which is where we are at the moment. So during this sort of period while we've been working at this proposal, we've researched models and various approaches in operation, particularly in NHS England, and we've also been included in a community of practice as part of that research. We've also looked at to see where people have got something similar in place, be it in NHS or elsewhere. And so we've sought the views and experience of people who've perhaps been involved or have continued to lead reservist models in our military services. So I'd like to thank colleagues around the table who've been involved in that as well. So the paper then that we finally produces references some of these varied models that we found, and there's lots of sort of slight tweaks around it. There's differences in arrangements. In some cases, they're part of a ward of establishment, almost like a sort of a separate bank for that ward. That's the best way of describing it, through to the more sort of familiar, if you ask people in the street what reservist might mean to you, that sort of military style approach where people can be called upon, they sign up to give X amount of their time and then can be called upon to support the services across a range of roles. So having done that, our scoping led us to propose that we have a nationally led by HEIW, locally adopted model of reservists. And this would be underpinned, or this is going to be underpinned by excellent employment practices, so that the reservists are identifiable, they feel part of a wider team, they're supported with education and training, and continually work ready and competent. It sort of matches the ethos of HEIW. The whole sort of compassionate leadership would be embedded through that, the way they're sort of supported, and that culture that we would build around them. In some of the models we've looked at as well, are thinking to get to this sort of nationally led model, there seems to be a breakup between where there is a sign up for your interest to actually transferring that into roles on the ground. And there's various models. Some is just the interest and the names are passed to the local organisation, sometimes more or less involvement in that sort of in-between process. So we've recognised that seems to be a key issue that we needed to think about. So to overcome this, our model proposes a national recruitment approach, very similar to the one that we developed in the COVID times with the sort of pop-up workforce. So if you recall that, we had a sort of, we described it as a little bit like the part-baked baguette type model, where you go so far to get something that's work ready and then just needs to be sort of finished off. And apologies for that analogy, but it worked quite well in that we would recruit, we would make sure that the standards are set around what we expect from employment, education, training, and then a work-ready person could be available to the health board just to sort of have the locally specific arrangements available to them. Again, I keep sort of thinking about the military model and how ours is probably relatively similar to that in the terms of thinking. So we're looking at the reservists to be available for a set period of time, probably 25 days per year, of which around 5 days we would anticipate would be training. And so, subject to approval and funding from Welsh Government, we would set up the national infrastructure to support this work. So HEIW being very much in the leadership, system leadership of this, to set those standards, to decide what the CPD would look like and to provide in terms of how we would provide to other staff as well. And also key to this is an overarching network where the reservists and the reservist coordinators would have a home, would have a place to sort of meet, greet, be part of a wider piece of work, and I think that is really important as well. So we've got all these ideas, but we need to test them out. So we're currently working with PAWIS, Teaching Health Board, to test this concept, and the plan is to develop 20 reservists over the next 6 months or so before rolling out further. This will give us an opportunity to test, will the recruitment processes work, do the induction work, how can we record them, how can we report on them, how can we pay them, so that all of that is worked through before we go and roll it out wider. So PAWIS have been really, really positive working with us. We meet with them weekly, and we're sort of identifying step by step. We've got some work going on next week to outline the sort of swim lanes for getting people into the employment in the first place. And we're holding a workshop in mid-April with a range of colleagues in PAWIS that we've been working with, and there have been a number of people that have stepped forward to want to be part of this, including frontline staff, staff who are already coordinating volunteers, for example. And so they're coming together for a workshop mid-April to work with us to progress this further. Where we absolutely critical is the reservists have to be in places that are needed by the health board. So we're not at this moment saying we're going to do reservists in this or this area. We are asking PAWIS, where do you think this would be at this point in time the most beneficial, with a clinical area focus is probably the best way to describe it. So that workshop will give us a little bit more indication of what these initial roles are likely to be. I think although it's the paper highlights quite a lot of how it will work and what the benefits we hope to achieve by this, I think it's important to highlight what it isn't as well. And so this isn't about changing anything. This is an additional workforce. It's not about replacing volunteers or replacing bank workers. This is something different again. And I think it's about opening opportunities for people who perhaps would like to support our NHS through meaningful work. And that might be in addition to their current employment. So while it may benefit attraction, recruitment, retention, that isn't its primary purpose. So I think it's just being very clear what this is about. It's additional workforce in times of need that we can call on, and the roles may be very, very different. PAWIS's story very much is sometimes we might need a chef that perhaps needs to do an afternoon for us from a local, if they're trained appropriately and are inducted into our services, because without that chef, we have a real impact on our patients. So it's about thinking a little bit broader as well. I've outlined some benefits that we anticipate further in the paper, but I guess this is anticipated to both increase the numbers of people available in the times of need, to offer them a potential mechanism to retain talent of staff who might otherwise leave the NHS completely, potentially. And as I've sort of mentioned before, it could offer an alternative for those who wish to support their local NHS in a way that works for them, or it might be so that they can try something new and different in ways that help their community as well. So it's quite a broad brush. It's very early stages. We need to work it through. I'm sure that the pilot proof of proof of concept, we're calling it, will give us some real opportunity to test some thinking and to really come up with something that's solid and gives us that opportunity over the 6 months or so. It will be dependent on organisational readiness to take this forward, and the model does allow for some support for us to put into health boards to make sure that there's a link back to us, and also to support the whole journey. If it all works, we would love to have 1,000 reservists within around about 3 years. That's the model that we're hoping for, but the proof of concept will tell us whether it's a goer or not. So I guess that's a summary of it. So thank you for listening, and happy to take any questions, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. So, John.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, can I say thank you for the paper, and I think living in very challenging times as we do, I think considering and examining alternative ideas and introducing a level of creativity and innovation, I think is always wise. Just a couple of points in respect to the paper I just wanted to tease out. The section on learning from England, what I'm missing from there is anything that says what the impact has been. Recruiting 17,000 reservists is one thing, but understanding whether people have been deployed and where and how and what the impact has been, I think is something that I would advise the board would need to consider, because it's one thing when people expressing an interest and signing up to something, it's quite something different deploying people and seeing then consequently what the impact of that actually is. So I just think it does miss the impact bit, and maybe that information is not yet available, but I just think it's something that the board should consider. And my second point is very much around the risks. This is predicated, to my mind, not just on this organisation taking a lead on this, but also persuading other health boards or other health boards of Wales to follow suit. I'm just wondering what the response has been from other health boards, what the engagement has been from health boards, and what the view has been about this particular scheme that is now rolled out in England, and whether or not they feel there's an appetite for this in Wales.
Yeah, so thanks to Andrew for providing an overview. I think those are really good questions. In terms of the learning from elsewhere, obviously we're a public board. So what I would say is when you actually look at the information that is available, it's very limited. We have connected with the officials in England. It's fair to say I think they haven't evaluated yet. The 17,000 includes people that came forward during COVID, and as noted in the big budget at the top of page 3, the translational conversion rates from expressions of interest into actual bodies is very low. So that's why we're advocating a pilot approach to test the proof of concept. And then coming on to your next point about health boards, and obviously it's a time of workforce challenges, and so everybody is looking for ways to increase supply. I think there is some wait and see in terms of how does it look in policy that actually achieve anything before everybody is signing up. And we certainly were very clear with government we haven't at this stage gone out with an active offer to all of the health boards, although they are aware we're doing this work. My final point would be that this is an action in the Minister's National Workforce Implementation Plan. So this is a requirement for us to produce a cost of business case and a choice for us to start with a pilot in Paris. So we think it could have some benefits, but we need to prove that it would be beneficial to the whole system.
Any other comments?
Yes, and thanks Angie, it's really helpful, and Julie's comments as well. I got two issues that I'm nervous about. The first is potentially incredibly expensive to deliver a small benefit. And so I looked at the costs, and I know they're a little bit, can be a huge estimate, but I just thought potentially they were underestimated, and I think they could potentially spiral. And the second bit is the safety and quality of the reservist workforce and stuff, and that links to the cost. Keeping people up to date on a constant basis if it is in any professional arena, or even the example that's used at Chef, understanding the differences about patient sort of nutrition. So those are my views.
John, Ruth, and then come to
Chair. So I certainly welcome AaGIC the ambition to try to be innovative in trying to address some of our workforce challenges. I'm incredibly uncomfortable with this, I have to say, from two perspectives. One, from a governance perspective. The paper talks about this coming to us for information only. I'm not sure why. There's a significant financial element to this, and I'm just questioning why it's not for our approval first, and there may be a reason. And of course, as you rightly say, Julie, this is already one of the recommendations within the workforce implementation. Well, what does that say about us as a board in terms of process? So I think we've got to be careful about that. Another general point is we've not had data from England in terms of its impact, so I just would echo Jonathan's point. And again, just to be a critical friend, I'm not sure, and convince me, the representativeness of 20 trials in Paris across 4 years, when they are very different in terms of what that would mean. So how meaningful will this be? 20 and Paris. No disrespect to Paris, but it's very different in terms of its provision. So where I'm seeking assurance, and it may be my ignorance and my naivety, but I'm concerned about the potential around pay differentials. Will that have a significant effect on local provision? Impact on existing health board bank arrangements. There's already local provision there. They go to that. What is the added value with this? And will it, for me, I need to get the assurance that it won't destabilize the current arrangements because the attraction is there. And will it take people? So if there's pay differentials, will it drive up costs? And will it take people from existing arrangements within the existing banks to the reservists? For rural health boards, will this provide new people or will it just take from existing individuals? And if it's going to take from the existing individuals, again, that raises questions for me in terms of the viability of this. I accept that, you know, this is trying to look for addition, as you said, Angie, but where is the addition?
Okay. The last point is one I've just made, but I also wanted to raise the issue of maintaining skills over a period of time with a drop of people who were on reserve and the extent to which they're used and the costs around that and the value added. But I really don't know the answers to that at the moment, really, because this is in very early stages. I'm really supportive of trying something different. And what I would say is if we do go ahead with this amended form, that we build evaluation into it right from the start, and that's that we have a product which is enough research and evaluation capability.
Tina?
I actually want to say that I had the opportunity to discuss this in a lot more detail with AaGIC and some other team. And some of the things that colleagues of the board have raised with regards to training, content training skills, maintaining up to date and that kind of thing. We did discuss, and part and parcel of that, Andrew's mentioned the military perspective. There are very good systems and processes that meet the regulatory functions of the GMC, GDC, and the NMC and HTPC that have to be maintained from a reservist military perspective. But also, when you look at the communities in Wales, like the police force and fire service, where you get these volunteers and reservists agenda. And this is recognising this is skill set potentially utilise in sometimes when you work in communities, especially in some of the civic areas that you look at, you can see the impact this will have on individuals wanting to give something to an organisation. I think it's worthy of trying it out and also getting substantive data so that we can look at the information and how it might be played out. I also think the opposite, when people look at reserves and think, well, are they going to be utilised? Actually, there is a cost benefit in relation to the current expenditure that Wales has on an agency, where people have the freedom to get weekly pay and work when they can. And I think some of the terms and conditions in this need to be enhanced. If we're looking at army projects, should be and a weekly paid effort so that they're paid short term, because that in itself may affect whether people come more regularly or not. I mean, if you do something not paid for 6 to 8 weeks or whatever like that, you're not going to get the enhancement. But I think mode of operation, and having been an army service for 23 years, I see quite a lot of the people as to having jobs outside the NHS, like who are now in the police force but are trained to reserve, keeping in the reservist element because that was the only option to enable them to enhance their skills. So I'd like to see this rolled out. I think Paris is a good area in terms of the community agenda, but the acute care sector, where we're looking at accident emergency, and also another area would be learning disability, where you might look at schools or children, teachers who work in that area might be enhanced that way. So I think it's an exciting opportunity, and I know that some of the questions that you've raised were raised in discussion. I have been some new questions, so it's always worthy of looking at those. But I do think there's an opportunity to actually do something rather than just knock it on the head and say no, it's not for us. But learning from England, I think, is important.
Lisa?
And I think that the learning of England from England is absolutely the key aspect from this. And just to share, I'm Julia to Julia and I got to discuss. So I've had experience of how this was set up, and it was very much during the pandemic. And the responsibility for retaining it was the ability to step up actually at times of need, possibly during winter. So all of the requests that you've then valid here, it was quite an intense process to support them. But obviously we need to be remembering that during the pandemic, there were a number of people who were not in work. So therefore, people that are coming back who were registered and actually wanted to come back and actually offer up. So we had a range of people who couldn't do their functions as they stood during the pandemic. And that's the resilience sector model we actually introduced. The other aspect I will introduce at the end that was introduced in was actually very much to a military and sort of RAF actually arena. So East Anglia is very much based in that arena. But without this reservist model, one model that we did have, without that reservist element, was we did actually work extensively actually with we've actually got consciousness of our city, and therefore worked actually with our garrison actually there. And when they came back actually from the Olympics, they did actually, we had an arrangement with them, not necessarily reservists, where they did come in and maintain their skills through ED and everything. And that worked extremely well, because that was a garrison actually working actually with the NHS. And that's a real step up, because it maintains their skills, but it also supports us during times that when they're down as well.
Right. Thanks, Chair. It's been a useful discussion, and kind of just plays back the conversations we were having 6 months ago when we were first asked to look at this by Welsh Government. So, I think we're all on the same page in terms of, on the one hand, we've got an absolute responsibility to turn over every stone we can to, if we can find a supply of staff into the NHS that isn't, as you say, big packaging on current supplies, and demonstrate that we've done everything possible given the crisis that's facing us. And clearly, there is a scheme across the border, So, you know, important we look closely at that and then we take all of the learning from that as well. I think, you know, one of the key things has already been mentioned as well, value for money. We absolutely would want to balance that with it's not at any cost. The costs in here probably should be just sort of put to the side at the moment, because all we're doing at the moment is spending the cost on the pilot, and the other costs are indicative costs that were submitted to Welsh Government, you know, just in terms of their request for what would your ballpark proposal be for developing this, if there was ministerial support. So, you know, what we would absolutely do, John, is if we were, once this pilot has found out some more information for us, and if we were then suggesting develop a cost of business case for a national scheme, we would definitely bring that back to the board for input, discussion, and then approval, because that would be, as you say, a substantial amount of money, and that's not what we're asking for today. So yeah, and I absolutely agree with your point. I've made a note of it. We do need to be clear where the board's role sits in relation to the end of the national rules implementation plan now, and making sure that we've got that governance in mind. So that's an example. But that's just to clarify today. What we're talking about is, you know, the pilot, which hopefully explore and unpack some of these risks. I think, you know, from your perspective, John, the point you've made about powers, we do need to take that back and have a look at, is that going to give us enough information, and do we need to think about a second tranche of that, and then we will bring that evaluation back to the board to inform any further conversations.
My observation is that powers is very specific, and we may not get the evidence base as quickly. And I think it could be you could balance it by having a second pilot site where it's in a city or urban area rather than rural base.
I think the learning from pilots will help us identify how we need to do that and how we do that, rather than launching something in an area where it's probably quite a lot
I would
of
be quite hopeful.
agency
I
activity.
would hope that we could be quite excited about this in terms of trying to find out, as opposed to not trying to deliver, but actually trying to explore this, right? So from my perspective, this is about, this is a proposition, a proposal. Do we have enough gas to find out if it could work, and what would be the benefits or what would be the disbenefits? But I think it's right that we're in the mix on this, and it is a ministerial. It is in the ministerial list, and I think there's the nidus of a very good idea. Can we make it? Can it be made into a great idea that is a compelling argument to do? So I would face it that way, as opposed to seeing this as a challenge of, oh God, we've got to make this work. I think how can we best make use of this piece of work we're doing now to inform what we do next?
Third Chair, I've all the points made very valid by all of the board. The one thing that I would say is that any investment we make in CPD for individuals, I think has got a real positive potential, because it might not just encourage them to go on reservist workforce. It might actually encourage them to come back into mainstream workforce, because once people feel more confident and feel the desire to and have support in being registered or even revalidated in some of the professions, I think that's got a positive spin on those individuals, which might inspire them more. So I think there's more benefits than risks in any cost that we have to provide CPDs.
So I'm going to bring this to a conclusion now, and the board has been asked to note, right, this paper, but I think the board today has actually given some good pointers as to what are the questions are that need to be answered to make this a viable, successful input into the NHS of the future. So I think it's really important that we don't get deflected from examining it and then being truthful about what's found. and develop it in full light of day and bring it through the board processes. And I'm sure a board development session, you know, should you want a board development session, or you need some board members input at any point. And you know, there's a wealth of experience around the table. So are you happy with that as a recommendation?
Yeah.
Yeah, are you comfortable? Does that give you enough to get on?
That does absolutely, thank you. I think the comments are really, really helpful.
Okay. Thanks, Angie. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you. Thank you, diolch.
Agenda item 3.3, digital capability framework.
Yeah, thank you. This is to update board on the work that we've been doing. As you're all aware, a key part of the workforce strategy, our digital strategy, and it's in the INTP, is our role that we are going to play in preparing the workforce of the future for the digital transformation that we're already going through, but will continue to go through. And I'm really grateful and happy to hand over to Lee, who has been personally driving and our right-hand woman in this space, who brings a real academic prowess to the piece of work, but I think has really engaged everyone, and not a mean feat in the amount of engagement that's gone into this. So Lee will take us through that, but to note your involvement as well, Lee, in getting to this moment.
Thanks very much, Sian. I've got some slides. Hold on 1 second. There we go. Can you see my slides?
Yes, great.
Fantastic. So for anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Lee Ballantyne, and I'm Digital Skills Programme Manager, and I'm leading on the development and implementation of a digital capability framework for healthcare. Now, I know I've submitted a paper, but I'm just going to go through some of the kind of key highlights and a bit of the background and context. So I think it's important to note that the digital skills agenda was very much a priority pre-pandemic. We were already talking about the fourth industrial revolution and the impact of emerging technologies on healthcare, and that's already come up today as well. And then what we saw through the pandemic was the adoption of digital technologies being greatly accelerated by years in some cases, as many organisations were forced to very quickly digitise products and services. And through the course of the pandemic, what we demonstrated was an unimaginable capacity for rapid transformation, with many of our long-term plans like telehealth being rolled out in days or weeks rather than the months or years it was planned. But this is not without challenges. What we saw was those unable to work, learn or access critical services online tend to be already disadvantaged, and so that increased reliance on technology had a compounding effect on inequality and on health and wellness. And we know some people in Wales can't or choose not to participate in online, and we know that the workforce have reported concerns about a patient's ability to access digital services. So we know there are gaps, we know there are issues, and all of these impact our digital capacity and capability. They're all related and interdependent. So we fundamentally need access, and by access I mean devices, infrastructure, connectivity. In the workplace, we also need the time and space to use technology. We need digital professionals, developers, programmers, the people who make and manage our technology. And then we need a workforce who can confidently and safely use technology and be part of the discussion around technology and support patients, because we need patients, service users, our citizens to be able to use technologies too. So whilst I'm absolutely focused on developing the digital capability of the healthcare workforce, we need all parts of this puzzle to fully realise the benefits of digital technologies. And I'm very committed to the fact that those should be tangible offline benefits. So we're talking about improved health and wellness, longer life expectancy, better access to jobs and education, and even voice and visibility as we move government services online. And we know the hardest barrier to overcome is that sense that computers are just not for me. I only need to look at a computer and it doesn't work, which of course becomes self-fulfilling and reinforcing. And all the research shows that formal interventions just don't reach those kind of people. They don't respond to offers of training, they're not interested. The only support that works is encouragement and help from friends and family. So I like to think that by developing the digital capability of the workforce, that in addition to supporting and empowering people to engage with digital and to realise the benefits of technology investments and national transformation programmes like e-prescribing, in addition to that, that we might have a ripple effect into those hard to reach groups in one direction, but also that we might generate pathways into digital specialisms as well. So Welsh Government is absolutely committed to ensuring that the healthcare workforce have the necessary digital skills required to support the implementation of the strategic objectives set out in the digital strategy. And so we have as one of our objectives in our IMTP to lead the development and implementation of a digital capability framework for healthcare. Now, I've got quite a few slides that I'll share. A lot of it's in the paper, so I'll just whiz through a lot of them as well. But just to highlight, this is about leading the development and implementation of a digital capability framework for healthcare. And what that means in practice is developing something whereby an individual can better understand the skills and capabilities, the attitudes and behaviours required to participate online, to use technology and to be part of the discussion around digital. We want them to be able to self-evaluate using an online tool, to then learn from the resources and then reflect on progress and next steps. Because this is about empowering people to continually develop. It's not something that you do once. Technology is changing all the time, and so it's really important that we all keep our skills up to date, keep ourselves informed so we can shape what happens and make good decisions. So this is a high-level outline of the approach. I won't go through it. I just want to really show that it's a very iterative approach. We started with a discovery phase, a landscape review, and we've worked with representation from across the professions through phase 1 and phase 2. We're currently in phase 2, where we have a fairly final version of the wording of the framework, and we're just creating the technology piece for the self-evaluation tool. And that's just a bit more detail on phase 2. I'm just going to whiz past this slide because what I want to do is show you what it looks like. If you haven't seen a digital capability tool, then sometimes it's hard to picture it. So this is a graphic of the framework. It shows the 6 domains, and then there's 3 subdomains in each domain. It's basically a taxonomy, a way of organising, grouping things together to make it less daunting, easier to understand, and easier to dip in and out of. And I've added a bit of text there just to demonstrate that then in each subdomain, there are 3 descriptive statements that demonstrate the competencies or the attitude or the behaviour or the skill that's relevant in that area. And then what that looks like when we translate it into the self-evaluation tool. So the competency was able to manipulate data. We've got a little bit of text there to show what that actually means. One of the principles underlying the framework was that it would be easy to understand. So even if you don't know anything about manipulating data, you should still be able to understand what this means and what the different levels are. And then the user would look at the different levels and choose the one that they felt most reflected where they are. And then once they finish the self-evaluation, they get this summary report back, which has got an overview of their answers and then recommended resources that are mapped to the framework. And those resources span from everything from online free courses to the opportunity to book face-to-face and formal qualifications. So there's a real range there. And that's something that's the resource repository is something that's still in quite early days. So there's an opportunity if you have any resources that you want to have added, then we can do that. And then this is the bit that I get really excited about. So this is the national dashboard. And we can, this is basically once people start to engage with the framework and complete it, then we'll be able to look and see at a glance what is happening in terms of digital capability across Wales. We can then drill into it by health board or profession or role or a combination of all 3. So we can really track engagement to make sure we've got good representation, and we can also make really targeted recommendations and interventions. And this is phase 3 that we're coming into. Again, this is in the paper, but the key highlight is that we're going to set up a new group, a peer group or community of practice that consists of those responsible for developing digital skills at a local level. So people who can support the rollout, the enablers, and we'll roll out the self-evaluation tool and monitor engagement. And then a really interesting piece that's come out of the work is a need to examine the barriers and opportunities to developing digital capability. So we're going to develop and roll out a national survey, and that's going to explore things like, do you have access to usable devices? Do you have reliable Wi-Fi? Do you have the training and support that you need? So I think having that data alongside the digital capability data is going to be incredibly powerful. We will continue to work with national programs like e-prescribing, so going in ahead of the rollout to develop skills and confidence and inform their plans for implementation. And then once we've got that baseline of digital capability, then we'll do a bit of evaluation, and we'll write it up, and we'll make some, we'll write a paper and have some recommended next steps. And these are the potential next steps. So it's likely that we will want to provide ongoing support for national programs. The digital readiness survey that I mentioned would be really, really helpful to run that on an annual or biannual basis, because then we can do lots of benchmarking, tracking over time, and we can measure impact of interventions that way as well. We can continue to use the data to have targeted interventions, so looking at specific professions, health boards, roles, and delivering targeted support where we need to. It would be really good if in the next iteration that we support transition pathways to specialist roles. So this is aimed at the general workforce, but if we have someone who's just a whiz in data, then it would be really good to signpost to the entry-level qualifications in that area, and that's really linking up with the work DHCW are doing. And of course, just embedding digital capability in everything that we do. So aligning with job roles, including in PDR discussions and referencing and planning, these are things that are happening already, but it would be good to see it happen more consistently in the future. So that's it. Whistle-stop tour of my work. If anyone wants more detail, then you can just contact me. I'm always happy to talk about digital capability. I'm going to stop sharing now.
Right.
I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Lee, for that. I think you left people breathless a bit.
I knew we were running out of time, so and I'm Scottish, so I speak really quickly naturally.
Can I ask you a knobby question?
Yeah, of course.
Can I ask you a cheeky question? The knobby question is, can you absolutely assure me that there's enough in this to make sure that our cyber security efforts are supported? I think cyber security is base camp for anybody, including the person using a till in a canteen, right? I think cyber security is right on the nose, because it only takes one person in the whole system, and the door's open.
Absolutely. Cybersecurity is one part of the digital capability framework. So there are lots of things arguably important in terms of digital capability. And yes, cybersecurity is in there. So we will have a better understanding of how people feel in terms of their skills and confidence, and then we can signpost to appropriate resources as well. So it's giving us more than anything else, this is giving us the visibility that we need in terms of digital capability. So we'll be able to understand better once we have that baseline, exactly where the issues are and where the targeted support is required. And if that's cybersecurity, then we could commission specific resources or do some targeted training in particular areas.
And this is the cheeky question. Did you use ChatGPT-4 to design the program?
So I have been doing a version of it. My presentation is kind of evolved over time. So a lot of this work predates ChatGPT. So no, it's an evolution of work from before then. But if it had, then I would be absolutely proud to stand up and say, yes, I use ChatGPT. I think it's one of the tools that should be in our toolbox. And if used appropriately, it's going to be fantastic at saving us some time.
Thank you. Any questions?
Just a quick one, Chair. Thanks, Lee. It was absolutely fantastic. Just a couple of quick questions. The first is, will this be mandatory right across the NHS? And the second question is, once the information is collated, because it can be a blunt tool rather than nuance sometimes, is there a danger that we'll get a development programme that's that's not affordable in terms of resources to deliver?
So I didn't quite catch the first question, but in terms of the second question, it was never the remit of this programme of work to commission resources in the first instance, because what we actually find anecdotally, and hopefully we'll get the feedback to evidence this, is that actually there's a huge amount of support out there for developing digital capability, and the challenge really is that people tend not to know where to start. Now that is an assumption, and the data will demonstrate whether that is absolutely true or whether actually there are some gaps. And I think from working with professionals in the working groups, potentially the area that's coming through quite a lot is around data literacy. So perhaps we really need to look at the support that's available around that. But until we get the data, it's just all assumptions just now.
The mandatory is not currently mandatory. However, that's intentional. Because we don't want this to be an assessment, because as soon as you make an assessment, it puts off those people that you want to do it most of all. Lee is on a bandwagon of collaboration and going to every single event, and we've already got interest from social care, for instance, to start using this tool. So we're creating it by stealth, as opposed to we may get to the point, however, that it's so widespread that it's the last thing that we kind of consider. But at the moment, it wasn't the design.
Alex?
Yeah, thanks, Lee. It's really helpful to see the presentations. I think that just really helps bring it to life, really, because I think for the non-digital professionals, sometimes that's a transition of understanding what's in that capability framework can not always be intuitive, I suppose. But that's really helped me think about, if I was a member of staff, how I would be able to do that self-assessment and identify how to improve. So thank you. And I know this huge piece of work has been done with limited resources as well, so we're really grateful for the quality of the work. And I think that's the bit for me that really, I think we've got to just really sort of think about, having digital capability and skills in the workforce is going to be such an important part of quality, because how we use technology going forward and how we improve efficiency and effectiveness of care is going to be so linked to the digital systems and the technologies that we use. So it's no longer an optional extra, is it? It's absolutely something which is going to go to the heart of what we do. So this is the start of a journey, as I think the members have commented on, really. I think in particular the twinning this, targeting this at programmes that are being implemented with digital platforms and systems that are coming in is absolutely, a no-brainer, isn't it? Because we all know and have experienced systems that have come in without staff having the right digital capability and skills. I think the ability now of us to really integrate digital skills workforce into those new systems will just really help accelerate the benefits of those systems as well. And you mentioned you describing that there are so many other massive digital systems coming into play at the moment that this work will be invaluable, I think. So just wanted to recognise that and to thank you very much, all the way from sunny Scotland.
So, board's asked to note progress and the plans for next year. I think we really welcome that presentation and we support the raising awareness of the digital capability framework and encourage participation. So perhaps a good place would be to put the independent members through this process. In fact, the whole board.
Why just the independent members?
It's on the plan.
It's on the plan. Lee, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Really good, thank you. Right, and going on now to agenda item 3.4, strategic equality plan. Are you reading on this?
Yes, thank you, Chairman.
It's you again.
Sorry, I do apologise. This is the first 3 papers we've got on the agenda today around our quality, diversity and inclusion portfolio. So it'd be remiss of me not to start by saying a huge thank you to Rhiannon Woods and Gareth Richards for their fundamental leadership and ambition in this area. They're both relatively new in terms of our history in post. They've been with us for a year or so, but they're continuously pushing the boundaries in this area. And I hope that comes through in all of the board papers. I also need to just briefly shout out about our network of inclusion champions. They're an immense support network for me and other colleagues, and they're full of inspiration and energy. So I just want to thank those members of staff who support this work. So we had published a strategic quality plan in 2020. We were due to renew it in 2024, but taking account of everything that's happening in the world around us, COVID pandemic, the government's publication of the Anti-Racist Wales Plan, the LGBTQ+ plan that's coming out, we decided to go in with a review of the strategic quality plan. And what you've got in front of you is a document that has been co-produced with our staff, our unions and our partners, just really looking at how could we make the plan more relevant for us in the organisation. I think since we were drafting our original one in 2019-20, we've been on a huge learning in terms of this agenda, what it means for us and what we can contribute. So we've been able to really just refine and hone in on what we think are 3 key areas of focus for us as an organisation. And I know this has been discussed with network members as well. So we would be looking for board to support today the publication of the new strategic quality plan with the 3 externally facing objectives. To note that we would then be producing over the next few weeks an quality impact assessment in parallel and with our staff, but also the implementation actions that will really drive into this plan. There are things that we're already doing in contribution and support of the new objectives and aims, but it just feels to me like a much clearer, concise articulation of what our ambition is in this area. I'm very happy to take
Comments, questions from the board members?
Yeah, thank you very much. Certainly welcome the plan. I think it's very encouraging to see and to read some of the ambition that to echo your comments around and back to the team. Yes, my question is, where do we as a board get the confidence and the assurance of what we're doing right for our staff and for our partners in delivering this plan? So while we may have our own ideas reflected in that plan, what I don't see with it, I note that there's comment there around consulting with key partners, race companies, Best Council Country, it talks about Stonewall, etc. I guess my challenge would be, unless I've missed it in the documentation through various papers, why aren't we subjecting ourselves to the UK workforce equality index that many organisations do? So Health Education England, the academic that I am, checked yesterday, I've got a score of 55, which is in the top 55. Welsh Government is 70. Cardiff and the Vale Health Board have just got into the top 100. If we are an organisation which is a learning organisation, which we are, I think that will be a very helpful platform for us to gain the confidence that what we're doing in that plan can assure our staff, because the feedback that they provide is done, as you know, by a Stonewall, is very helpful.
No, I think that's a really good point, John. That's something we definitely look at. We have been working through a programme of accreditation. We've been doing a lot in that area, but we've not explicitly gone to the index yet. But that is something we definitely think about. I think, as I say, you know, the new plan gives us much more clarity and focus about what we're going to be driving forward, and certainly with the new team in place, I think we're in a good place to sort of look at things like that.
A challenge, aren't they? Yeah. Tina, do you want to come in?
I just think that the first plan we had, and where we've now got the EDI regular meetings with staff contribute to, there's been a lot of engagement with third sector organisations to date, and every member of the board was invited to attend this meeting. Interesting to see how many of you have attended it, so it's a challenge back to come and attend that meeting and see just exactly how much engagement there is across the sector, and also how some of the other work that the champions are doing, making sure that the protected characteristics are reflected in every meeting, that it's not just one or two focuses of well, when you look at different months and days of the year where there are celebrations, they've already planned for it, you know, so it's across the board. I think when we looked at the IFP, the reason that I commented on that in relation to the EDI was that it's embedded across our organisation. So it's very helpful to maybe look at the indices to see how the against that. We have been developing a number of engagement organisations with compliments coming back.
So if it helps, just give a practical example of that, so which is very relevant to now. So it's Ramadan at the moment, and just before we start Ramadan, we had a group of young people meeting in this room, and they were from the AaGIC Muslim Youth Leadership Programme. And they came here to actually talk to us about what they would want to see in careers, in work, what their expectations were. And we had a number of our staff in the building participating in that. We took them on a tour of the building, told them about our multi-faith room upstairs, our approach to supporting things like Ramadan, and our approach to inclusion generally. They were really, really impressed to such an extent that they actually put us forward as an example of an exemplary employer. And we've been approached by a BBC journalist who's going to come and interview one of our Muslim staff to talk about what we are doing as an exemplar in the field. So that's the difference, that this new team, the new focus that we've got, new governance around the EDI steering group and the network, that's what we're doing. And I just feel as though we're really punching in this area, you know, in a way that we haven't been previously. And it's fantastic to work with these people and colleagues. So hopefully that brings it in and bits of life into the stuff we're doing.
I have to say, I read this and about this. I had the occasion to spend a lot of time with the staff, and it feels, the organisation feels, when we had the memorial to Rebecca, and if you looked up in the room, it was just very, it felt very warm, very inclusive. You read the memorial book and the comments made just about from every shape, form of person, just felt comfortable enough to put something there. So I would say that I think John's idea is a good idea of you know, I think we need to know we're doing well. We may feel we are, anything that can prove it, but what I wouldn't do is interview the spirit or the culture that's developed with the teams that are there now and how they're integrated. I think it's a great thing. The document's fine. Yeah, I would say it's a strong advocate, this one. It's a really, you know. Okay, so guys, we've been asked to approve the strategic equality plan Approve the strategic quality plan objectives. And that may be published on our website. And I think we're encouraging the organisation to explore the UK industry.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And well done to the team putting this together. Yeah. So now, does everybody want a 2-minute comfort break? Yes. So it's 13:14. We will meet back at 13:20. Okay, and I'm so sorry that we're going to overrun. 6 minutes.
Sorry, Chair.
you.
You're right behind me, right?
Yeah.
So, that we now consider agenda item 4.1, which is the finance report. Yeah.
Yes, so the report sets out the reported position for month 11. So each of the reports then spent 96,000 against profile budget as at the end of February, and that was following the board briefing where we discussed and agreed an additional 900,000 that we would need to hand back to Welsh Government. So we've actually had a final allocation adjustment agreed between ourselves and Welsh Government, which is a total of 22.1 million for this financial year, leaving us with a projected unspent at year end, which is tomorrow, of around 350,000. Obviously, there will be slight ups and downs in the process of closing the year end position next week as we go through it, but we're not anticipating anything material left in this financial year. So we will be around that 350k underspent mark. The reason for underspending is set out within the report, identifying those areas that we've discussed previously, but particularly exceptional year in terms of recruitment and attrition from forces, and we've discussed that at previous meetings, all of the reasons for those. The balance sheet detail is set out in the report, and we have we've been able to secure a further 150k of capital in this financial year due to slippage on the national programme, and I think that is an opportunity for us going forward. We've identified some things that we may be able to progress next year, using that opportunity where there is slippage in the national programme, but our core allocation of 76k and that 150 will be fully spent within this financial year. I need to report that we have a small issue on our PSPP and the achievement of that target in the financial year. So we, as at month 11, were cumulatively at a figure of 94.13 against a 95% target. There have been some issues within the accounts payable team in shared services where they need to scan all of the invoices that go through to them, and they will be late to up to that in December and then again in January. But it's very, very difficult to catch up on that. So it's likely that we won't hit that 95% target at the end, which is disappointing, but we will be very, very close. So that's all I was going to report, but I'll take any comments.
Questions, comments? Yes, you are. Fine. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very brief. I was going to ask about the public sector payment policy, as you might expect. I just wonder if we might want to take something through to the audit committee on that. So rather than extend the conversation here, so we get underneath the skin of that a little bit. The second question I had, was that when we have a board briefing, we're going to do a deep dive, won't we, into the reasons. Will we get a paper coming back from that to explain a little bit of the further understand? So will we be getting something on that? Yeah, certainly can do that. I'll say that it is on our accepting action. Yeah. And then the last question about it, which was so we've got a shelf full of things that we can just take off if we do get this extra capital. Yeah, I think it's more so that opportunity presents itself in here, and then we've got things that are ready to go. So if we're aware that we can utilise any of that capital, then that's the opportunity. So I think there's one that we're aware of now, so we can discuss with Welsh Government next year, and it could be that they'll they'll either give us the allocation or we'll be able to utilise some of that if they want. Generally, yeah.
We're also in an IT refresh program now with laptops coming out for 5 years. So a large proportion of that capital share refresh, those will be rolled out into next year, and then there'll be a rolling rollout.
Any other questions for Rhiannon on the finance paper? So we're asked to note the underspent financial position reported as of month 11. Ratify the return of the additional 0.9 million to Welsh Government considered at the board briefing on the 6th of March. And ask you to ratify. Yes. Note the actions progressed to be in balance at year end, being a return of 22.1 million to Welsh Government. Note there is summarised explanation of key variations by directorate. Note the capital allocation and spend to date, and note the balance sheet position. Yeah, thank you very much, everybody. Agenda item 4.2, down and again, revenue allocation, my favourite letter.
Yeah, so the figure sets out the core of the current revenue allocation that we've received from Welsh Government, and then the reconciliation between that and our financial plan in the IMTP. So on page 3, there is detail of the core allocation that we have received from Welsh Government, and that being an allocation for 23-24, 320.4 million. And predominantly the increase included in that is as a result of our education and training plan and the approval of that, and all of the additional commissions that we included in that, and the resourcing of those as a result. The financial plan at 329.1 million includes other items that are either non-recurrent or so subject to additional or further agreement in year, as we have done in previous years. So 4.2 million of that difference is the primary care plan and the strategic mental health workforce plan. So they are non-education commission costs, but have been agreed with policy leads in Welsh Government and have been supported, and we will receive that allocation in year. It's just not part of our core recurrent permanent allocation. There's a further list of items on page 4. Again, these are considered to be non-recurrent. Some of them we've had for a number of years, but they're not part of our permanent allocation. But we have got agreement with either Welsh Government policy leads or others that support these. So we have commitment that we will receive those as well. So that total between the 4.5 on that list and on the previous page is the difference between our core recurrent allocation and what we have in the IMTP. So hopefully that just informs that we're not committing resources that we don't understand or have access to. So really the report was just to set that out, and I suppose just make the point that we are ensuring that the organisation has the resources in place currently to make the commitment to our education contracts to those commissioning members, and then that we are also in compliance with our standing financial instructions, that we have the current baseline to commit to contractual expenditure recovery, which I know is a concept that we've had.
The real challenge now is to make the greatest value out of this investment and to peak the performance. So, you know, this is as much as we could have wished for, given the situation, and I think it's a real statement of intent by the government. Yeah, I think it's a massive input from them. It's really good to see the mental health plan that took so much work, to see that funding coming through, Alex. You know, during that's big stuff. So, you know, the primary care bit that's come in as well, on top of what we've already got. So, you know, my challenge to us all is to work together with our partners to get the best deal we can for NHS work. Absolutely, go for it. Are there any questions, comments anybody else wants to make? John? No? Okay. All right, no. Not like to say that, the chairman. Okay, so we've been asked to note the revenue allocation for 23-24 and the reconciliation between the allocation and the IMTP financial plan. Okay, thank you very much. All right, performance report. Is that you again? Okay, performance report, Rhiannon.
Yeah, thank you. So we've brought today the third performance report of the year. It's based on Q3, but obviously when there's something significant material, then we obviously build that into the report. So just in summary, at the midpoint of the year, we identified 11 strategic objectives that were amber and required sort of remedial action. So a lot of work was undertaken by the relevant teams to address some of those that were slightly off track. And as a result, 4 of the 11 have moved back into green with key appointments made. 3 other objectives, though, have actually gone the other way and identified that we've agreed with an exec team that they will be taken forward into the new IMTP cycle and the new financial year. In terms of education and training, we've discussed previously, there's been a challenging year in terms of fill rates and an increase in attrition, and that's I guess impacted on the HEIs in their ability to deliver the commission to numbers, which has generated the underspend in our financial position. So yes, detailed information on the education and training aspects is included in section 3 of the performance report, but there are some positive messages in there as well, including pharmacy foundation training at 99% fill rate, midwifery, dental specialties, and allied health professional. So we have got some really high fill rates that we're able to report as well. In terms of quality, we're continuing to monitor the areas that are in enhanced monitoring for postgrad medical education and health professional education programs. But in Q3, there were no new referrals, but also no areas of de-escalation. So I guess we are in that same space. And I know that was discussed at the education and quality commission meeting as well. We have got specific issues that have been identified with one of the HEIs, but there is an awful lot of work that is ongoing to sort of work with them on an implementation and improvement plan. In terms of our internal performance, the compliance rate for strategy manager training is meeting well on our target. There's some work to do on our PADR compliance levels, and there's been a small deterioration on that, but obviously working very hard to try to get that up to where it should be. So I wasn't going to go through any more in detail, but obviously happy to take questions and ask colleagues to help me answer them.
That is the point, isn't it? This is a team game. It's a team game here on in. John.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Rhiannon, for the refreshed performance framework as well as the report, which joy isn't the right word, but I found it very helpful to read. It was much better. It gave me a sense of where we were and how we were doing. So I'm grateful. If I can just pull out 1 or 2 things. The first thing that jumped out to me, which I think we need to be looking at in far more detail, is what you put at the section 3, which, and I know it's only part, but it's the UCAS data. Now that's quite worrying for Wales when you read what it says there compared to the other nations. I guess when you read that against the challenges we're facing around recruitment, this tells you it could be a lot worse in the future. So my question is, to what extent have we done modelling based on demographic data? I'm sure Sharon, when your team presented some time ago, they talked about demographic data for us. I challenge it that we need to use that demographic data to use it to say, well, what are these applications, we can do the modeling, what are these applications going to look like for years to come? Because if you look at the trajectory there, it's worse for Wales. Well, what are we going to be facing if this is the picture in terms of applicants? And I think that demographic data will be very helpful for us.
So do we know if other sectors other than health are raising that same issue?
I don't know, but I just get the impression that the demographics for certainly Southwest Wales, in terms of the 40 to 80-year-olds that are coming to, there's a decrease of 11% in the vote last week of people that are likely to be coming into A-levels. That's from Pembrokeshire College. Now, that's significant.
Education is similar to health.
So there's a bigger, this is a big, yeah, this is a very big story. This is a very big issue for health, but is it a general issue for Wales?
Yeah.
That's the worrying thing that needs to be thought very carefully about. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. So that's my first point, John. The other point, I like the metrics that you've got in the dashboard. You could see that you brought up the PDR, it was there. We all know that commissioning is a large part of what we do. And I'm just wondering whether we should have some commissioning data in that dashboard. When I went through the report, you've got commissioning data as far as the health professions are concerned. There's a table in section 3 that's there. That's the dashboard data. But what I don't see it being applied to dental, pharmacy, etc. And in terms of us getting as a board a snapshot of where are we in terms of the commissioning, particularly that's going to be absolutely critical for us in the year ahead, it might be helpful. Thank you, Chair.
Any other questions or comments?
I think on that last point that John's just raised, there is a historical data over the last 12 years, which actually gives those commissioning figures, the uptake and the reasons and service across all the professions. And it does go towards function forms, so it'd be helpful maybe to use that and attach that to the appendices, because it does go annually to the cross partnership form. We have copies of that. Julie, but it was produced. Yeah. Yeah, and Stephen used to present it here.
Right. So
There is a historical, it starts from, I think it goes back to as far as, I'd say when the assembly started in 1999, 2000, about commissionings across all of the professional groups, the numbers that were commissioned and released and preserved. And it covers everything, and it comes from Welsh Government, but it goes to partnership. I've still got old copies of that.
Yeah, obviously we've got our commissioning manifest.
That's historical data.
But it's easier to know whether someone has got that because it's not.
That's from that. So when I was in Welsh Government, I got it from Wales.
Yeah.
So
we have got that.
Yeah, we haven't done it since we've been HEIW in the same way, and it hasn't gone through to the partnership.
It would be interesting to look at that, to get that historical data that we're looking at, because then you can get.
But it's predictive bit as well.
Yeah. That was the bit, because Keith heard the predictions based on the footprint of Wales, of the population need, and the potential people workforce coming in, and that also was commissioned by the health. That was the Keith Hurst agenda. You're asking for
some of that vision was covered in the newspaper on our direction of informed pretty much for next year. So that is our plan for getting the warehouse to a state. So with the warehouse that we've got at the moment, this warehouse needs to be redesigned. We've started that piece of work. we're looking at the data sources, we've done an analysis of where our gaps are. So we've got a lot of the commissioning data. We're not pulling any request data yet, but that is an area. We've already looked at some of the GMC data that we're bringing in ethnicity now. So there's a real plan over this next 12 months, and it shows through the timeline there of being able to present not just a written format of performance work, but you can have actual interactive action with the dashboard.
What I
as
sense
well.
is there's a step change here, in that it's not like it would be nice to have. We're into the territory now where we absolutely need to have. And we might think we've got the full bucket list at the minute. I think this list is going to grow. So viewing this as a journey, and I think we definitely bought the ticket and we're on the bus, right? I definitely think we're there. What I think is that the destinations, to get to the final destination, we're going to have many more nodal points where we ask ourselves these questions. Have we got the right sets of data, right? And can we get them? And if we can't get them at the time, can we construct so that we do get them? Because necessity now will become the mother of best invention, definitely. Right? So this is in a better place. It's not ever going to be good enough. So because the goalposts will continue to move, but at this moment in time, we've got a real tangible issue about bill rates, and that will follow through into NHS workforce. And if we now know that the UCAS data is flagging that we've got issues with people going towards A levels, we've got to compensate for that, not just in this room. That starts right across the local authorities with other government departments. So these are significant things that are coming out of this performance report. So can I close the conversation out on this performance report? We're asked to receive the report, for assurance, and I think we ought to note that we've had a good debate about the future needs for data, and inclusions into future performance reports. So then we go on to the refreshed performance framework 23-24. So that becomes live now and there.
It does, but I suppose as we've just discussed, so we'll start with the Q3 performance report. There will be so although obviously we've established the INTP on the basis of the new performance framework, and we're setting ourselves up to be able to report on performance in this way, you probably won't see the outputs of this new framework until we get to that Q1 performance reporting.
Q2, isn't it?
To report Q1, which you'll see in Q2.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. June.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
So, and I think it is. It's
No,
going to be
October.
no, it's June.
June. Okay. Right.
And it's going to be a iterative journey, isn't it, along with Sean and the team about how we establish and ensure that data is robust and accurate we can report on. Because the performance approach is building on best practice that the team have identified, moving into that, what is the key business question that we're answering in the activity that we decided through our INTP that should be undertaken, and then can we define a KPI, and that gets us into that sort of data and dashboard space, which we'll be able to, will be more live, and we'll be able to drill down through that and then understand more about what is happening and how we can then respond to that.
So this refreshed performance framework, the board members have had an input into the way this is developing. Are there any comments about this? No? We're on the bus. Yeah? And I would advocate that we keep revisiting as a board development sessions, how we see this progressing and how it marries up to the database that we're creating. Yeah, there's a real governance line in here that we've got to be mindful of, in that the commissioning effort and the financial management is intrinsically linked. Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Refresh of the gender pay gap report. Julie, back again.
I have indeed, yeah.
My God, have you had a drink?
I've had a rest, yeah. I've
Okay,
had a drink.
the rest of your throat.
Yeah, no, good, thank you. Okay, so, board will be aware that we have a legal duty to produce a gender pay gap report every year, and to do that, and to upload it to the Welsh Government site, and published by the 31st of March. We have set out a report in line with the guidance, which is quite clear about what we need to report and what we need to cover and how we need to calculate things. I'm going to assume that board members have read the report. Just a couple of very quick highlights. So our mean hourly rate has dropped slightly. Our median hourly rate has stayed static. The majority of our workforce is female, and we have a huge high proportion of women in our lower graded roles. We're also constrained by the national pay arrangements, which include paying for excellence awards to our medical and dental staff. So there is a limit to what we can do, I suppose, is what I'm trying to get across to you. Notwithstanding that, we have looked at our workforce through a different lens this year. We've applied the methodology that we use for PNTR and other areas. So whilst we have to report legally on the total workforce, if you look at the workforce that we've got more influence over, which is our core workforce, excluding our sessional, mainly clinical workers, then you can see mid of page 3 that we've actually seen a decrease of 9%. What that means is that we are bringing more women into the middle and higher banded roles, and that is equaling out our pay disparity between the genders. In our gender pay report, we have included not only saying things that we need to report on, but we have also put on pages 5 and 6 the actions that we're taking to work towards closing the pay gap where we can, and that is reflected in our strategic policy plan, which the board approved earlier on this morning. So I would ask the board for support, please, to allow us to publish this report.
Okay. Any questions, comments?
Thank you, so. Chair, I just wanted to say it's a really good report, and I completely understand this. There's only so much you can do, and really wise. So I wouldn't be too ambitious in the action plan in some ways, because we actually can't do a huge amount, but very much welcoming it. One of the things that wasn't mentioned in there, talked about entry to schemes and the progression, and how because a lot of females coming into the graduate schemes and the rest of it. There's little mention of the barriers to moving from through the levels, and some of which I was on the 3 C's: childcare, coaching and confidence, and those sort of things. And it's there that the attrition quite often happens when people are in middle grades and don't want to make that move. So I just wondered if perhaps you could think about that for the future in terms of actions. And one quite low. Top page 4 should be mean, not medium, in the hourly rate. First sentence.
Not the move.
Thank you, that's really helpful.
Okay. Any other comments? I wish we could go at a faster pace of this. Absolutely understand the issues, but it's feeling, as a white male, it's feeling more and more uncomfortable.
So 36% of our staff are sessional workers. To take those out, we are making huge improvements in our core staff. 9% change.
which is
Superb.
So the board asked, oh, sorry, Lisa.
Yeah.
Sorry, I put my head down.
Yeah, so just to get a question on what Jill said, it's quite interesting that I can understand the due opportunities for career progression. I thought we were great. But it's quite interesting because if you at that workshop that we had yesterday, there is a key issue in valuing the staff to stay where they are. In other words, staff actually sometimes do not want to actually fulfill any more careers. And it's about how we value them actually in those particular roles in order that they fulfill to that responsibility. So it's not about everybody doesn't want a career progression. Some people just want to do their job really well and are valued for doing that. So it's just not thinking of right, isn't it? And that came through quite strongly yesterday.
Okay. Board asked to approve the HEIW's annual equality report 2021-22. Sorry, gender pay report, sorry. Yeah, wishful thinking, yeah. No, I'm asking you to note the gender pay report and agree that the report can be published on 31st of March. Thank you so much. And now we'll go to the annual equality plan report.
Okay.
Is that you again, Julie?
That might be.
Yeah.
So we have a legal duty to publish this annually. What I've got to say on the gender pay one, that both the gender pay and this one, we are working on a plan to publish these in July every year rather than leave it to March. We've explored and we are able to do that. What that means is you get information in the public domain sort of 3 months after the year to which it relates, rather than a whole year later, because when we were producing this, we had to strip things out because we were like, oh, actually, we can't say that because this is a year ago, but we've done so much in 12 months. So I will assume that you've read the report. What I'll say is from a compliance perspective, I can confirm that we've met our legal obligations, and in fact, as we talked about earlier, we've gone significantly over in a number of areas. There is a mixture in here of external accreditation, some innovation like doing the right thing, stuff about compassionate leadership programs, training development, but also influencing the Welsh Government with their anti-racist Wales action plan and other action plans. So I think it represents a really good year of work. As I say, there's lots more we've done since, and we'll look to bring application forward in future years. I would be happy to take questions. I'd like to go to approve the package.
Comments or questions? Okay, nice report. Lovely, thank you very much. Board asked to approve the annual quality report 21-22. Thank you very much. Risk, appetite and tolerance.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, David. Felly, papur yn gofyn am gymeradwyeth ydy hon. Dyma adolygiad blynyddol o bwrdd y bwrdd i dderbyn risg a gofod garwch risg yn unol rhan polisi risg. Diben neu pwrpas y ddogfen ydy amnellu trawrwydd y bwrdd i oddef risg wrth gyflawni ei amcanion strategol. Bydd aelodau yn ymwybodol, bydd aelodau yn ystyried cyfarfod o'r datblygu'r bwrdd nôl mis Chwefror. Yn y cyfarfod, rhaid yn amlwg bod ateilad eitha clir bod ni'n edrych eto o ran gofod garwch risg a ran yr arian dros ben yn y gyllideb, yn y dosben. Gan hynny, bydd yn awgrymu bod y path effaith risg newydd yn cael ei gyflwyno i'r ddogfen, sef risg 10, yn ymwneud â defnydd o adnoddau, ac mae'r newid sy'n cael ei gymryd wedi ein bod ni yn amlinellu bod agwedd proddef risg y bwrdd a gwario tanwariant yn yswen, bellach ganoli, ac yn cael ei adlewyrchu dros cyfnod 3 blynedd INTP.
Right, now all members will have considered that we have read the paper, and we had a conversation in our last board development section about our risk appetite, and as David has highlighted, the risk appetite change, particularly on utilisation of resources, has shifted. I think that does. Members think that does reflect the conversation we had and the situation we find ourselves in. Yeah. So are there any questions or comments? If there aren't, I'm asking the board to approve the updated risk appetite and risk tolerance documents as appendix 1. That includes the amendments highlighted in the proposal section of the risk appetite and risk tolerance report with respect to utilisation of resources. Okay, thank you. Then there's the risk register. The risk register is there, it's there for noting. Is there anything that anybody wants to raise against the risk register, John?
Sure. Thank our colleagues for the work on the risk register. This is an improved document. It's helpful to see trend within the document. I just want to ask a quick question with regards to one new risk, which is risk 18. Reflects on the conversation that we had earlier, and that remains our ability to deliver the educational training plan and the risks associated with that. The risk talks about our mitigation is I think 13. I think it talks about schemes to try and mitigate that risk. My question is, how confident again are we that these are on track and that they will mitigate the risk? Secondly, just to be pedantic, I know what it means by ongoing, but in terms of accountability, should we be putting dates in the risk register when it says ongoing? That could be an endless, and I'm just wondering whether there should be end dates in this. So even if you're going to revise them, just a thought, but particularly this 18.
Yeah, just to suppose in summary, because I think there probably was a paper on some of these initiatives to the education committee last week, in terms of process and risk management. We are putting in this oversight group, which Sean is actually going to share, to make sure that those initiatives have all got milestones and plans, and that there is that oversight of bringing them together, and any exceptions can be identified. As you rightly point out, we've got to be doing this activity in the next 2 months if we've got any chance of moving increase in next year's education and training plan. So without getting into the detail today, we have got that plan in place.
I'm deliberating because some of those schemes are very innovative. It was a pleasure to hear what those schemes are and what is being delivered by each team. It's just making sure that we've got structures in place to deliver.
And the right resources and as well.
And this duality, as well as actually that structure you just described there, that we have to put into place, that work is already to come in through that strategic review work, which is a programme board. There's a duality that is to where that risk is, and actually that's where that risk lies. So it needs to get the issues through that programme, but also into that as well. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions or comments about the risk register? Right, I'm asking the board asking the board to note the report for assurance. Annual self-assessment, David.
Yes. Felly, unwaith eto plan gofyn I fod almost all of that. Mae'r bwrdd cynnal un asesiad yn ddiweddol, cwblhawyd oedduron yn ôl yn mis Rhagfyr ac yn ystyried y canlyniadau yn y sesiwn datblygu bwrdd eto yn mis Rhagfyr. A'i bydd ati wedi ni ystyried camau weithredol I gefnogi ddatblygiadau gan y bwrdd. Ystyried y camau hynny yn y cyfarfod diwethaf o datblygu bwrdd yn ôl yn mis Chwefror. Mae camau weithredol wedi cael eu cynnwys yn paragraff 3 o'r adroddiad yma, felly byddwn ni'n gofyn i'r bwrdd os gwelwch yn dda I gymrydwyo y camau weithredol.
Okay. Any comments or questions about board self-assessment? I want to make one comment about this area, and it revolves around the Audit Office Audit Wales report on Betsy Cadwaladr and the significance of that they placed on the board assessment framework. So we're going to have a discussion about that report as a board. I'm just giving the heads up, David, that after that discussion, we may want to reflect again on the board assessment framework in light of having considered that report in more detail. Okay, I just put that up as a marker. Okay, so as it stands, we've been asked to consider that report and approve the actions contained in the proposals paragraph. So can I ask for your approval for that? Yeah, with the proviso that we may well need to flex or renew elements of the board self-assessment. Thank you. Have you got that, Sarah? Yeah, thank you. Complaints policy, David Eto.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, a papur unwaith eto yn gofyn am Cymreigwyr Hons. O ran cefndir, mae'r siaradwyr polisi yn drin a cwnio pasol gan AaGIC nôl yn Sioned 1. Ar y pryd, penderfynu i beidio mae'r siaradwyr polisi safonol Llanfechyd, sef Putting Things Right, PTR. Y rheswm oedd hynny oedd bod PTR yn canolbwyntio cwynion yn codi am wasanaeth cleifion, a teimlodd ar y pryd nad oedd hyn yn adlewyrchu swyddweithau AaGIC, sydd wrth gwrs ddim yn tri cleifion yn uniongyrchol. Ar y pryd, roedd Llywodraeth Cymru yn cefnogol i hyn. Fodd bynnag, daeth tro'r byd llynedd gyda dyfodiad y dyletswydd gonestrwydd neu'r British Calendar. Rydym bellach wedi derbyn arweiniad clir gan bod Cymru a dylai trin unrhyw mater ble mae y dyletswydd gonestrwydd yn cael ei ystyried. Bod y math yna fwyn yn cael ei ddelio yn unol a rheoliadau y PTR. Gan hynny, rydym wedi diwygio'r polisi i gydnabod bod unrhyw pwyd sy'n codi yn gysylltiedig â'r dyletswydd gonestrwydd British Calendar yn cael ei drin yn unol â rheoliadau PTR, Putting Things Right. Bydd pob gwyn arall yn cael ei drin yn union â'r polisi cwrddasol AaGIC ar gyfer cynnig. Felly, bod gofyn ysgolchau bwrdd i gymeradwyo'r polisi cynnig.
So is everybody clear about that divergence of approach? Yeah. Are there any questions for David on it, or are you happy for me to close this issue? So the board is asked to approve the HEIW's update complaints policy. Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Agenda item 4.11, key issue report from the committee's Education Committee 23rd of March.
Yes, a verbal update,
Yeah.
Chair. Because the meeting was changed in terms of dates, which turn around, just say we received reports on medical, dental and pharmacy correction reports and was reported in the closed session. There are some enhanced monitoring, which we've now asked to be substantiated for the GMC review in relation to some of the areas within Wales that had medical placements, medical enhanced monitoring, where visits were defined. So we wanted assurance from the GMC perspective. The committee also received and noted the report from nursing and health professional. We've covered some of the agenda already within Yann's report, so I won't go back over that. But nevertheless, we also looked at some of the new programmes that we're developing and tenders that we approved the tender for workplace learning. The other issue was we had concerns about recruitment of nursing, particularly in the commission rates, acknowledging that there has been an increase in nursing placements
and there's been improvement over the last few years, but nevertheless, it's apparent across the whole of the UK that there seems to be a decline that could be linked to some of the issues that are around strike action and pay and stress and all that kind of thing. But we have asked for reports to come back to the committee in June, where we're looking at placement capacity, attrition and bill rates, and how the Train Work Live campaign works alongside universities to encourage people into that education agenda. So well presented meeting in terms of the papers. There was high level support for the calibre of papers, and of particular note, I gave an update with regard to the stakeholder reference group in its meeting on the 9th of February in areas specific to this committee. But we have the Welsh language showcase placement videos, which I reported earlier on in the committee today, but I do think that demonstrates the effectiveness of the education of Welsh language commissioning and the output of patients and engaging patients. We found which were met at the most of NHS, so that's an impact, and I'd like to see that developed on in terms of our communication processes. It may encourage more people coming to health sessions when they see the impact it could have on people. I think the plan to achieve the 23-24 nurse commissioning quality, I mentioned that we have asked the executive to come up with a plan and how we might improve our liaisons with universities to get an access, and John's already mentioned using UCAS. Having said that, it might be to improve that.
Audit committee, 6th of February.
Just a few brief points, if I may. Pleasing to see the internal audit reports. We have 3, 2 was substantial assurance and 1 reasonable, so that's all good. Audit Wales haven't delivered the plan to the normal audit committee cycle. It's coming to the one next week. And there are 2 reasons for that. First is that they're delaying the audit of the health accounts quite significantly, actually, to the end of July. And also the impact of ISA 315, which demands greater skill sets and greater understanding of risk. We have now received a letter from the Auditor General, Adrian Crompton, and the fees for the audit are likely to go up by 15%. So just want the board to know that it's 4.8 increase for inflation and the 10 point for the impact of ISA 315, and we will be going into more detail on that at the audit committee, and hopefully if there are any questions on that, I'm sure the Alan will be pleased to answer those. So that was the 2 points. The second, the other 2 points I just wanted to raise was we always take the losses in the special payments report, but there have been some salary overpayments, and so we asked for a specific report to come back to that audit committee on salary overpayments, which we looked at, and also in terms of procurement, all will be aware that the audit committee have been scrutinising single tender actions with some vigour, and we're pleased to see that there's going to be an increase in the procurement activity and awareness for working directly with officers in HEIW to help to understand the interactions and contracting in general. So that was all I wanted to raise. Everything else
Thank you, Joe. I'm sitting here aware that Jonathan will no longer be a board member and therefore not able to sit on our audit committee. And that means that as soon as possible, I'd like to be putting another independent member on your audit committee. And so I would like to be able to do that ahead of the June board. So with your permission, I'd like to be able to take chair's action to get that done and report that back. So we fulfill our standing orders. And the other thing is, you mentioned the magic number, the AaGIC 315. I have absolutely no idea whatsoever what that entails. But is it possible to have at some point an idiot's guide to board members to understand why it costs so much? And is the one of the questions I would like answered is, does the increased cost of the audit office come before or after their efficiency saving target? Because I can't believe they're an organisation that stands alone without having to demonstrate efficiencies in this fiscal tight time. Well, you know, I just think it's a good question to ask everybody. Okay. As far as I can tell, we come to the in-committee decisions. David?
So that's a summary of the in-committee decisions taken at Chairman's board.
And that's for noting. I really apologise for that it's been such a very long meeting. Put it down to bad chairing. However, I think it's been a really interesting and complex set of issues that we've discussed. And I'll just close by saying once again, Jonathan, thank you so much. Yeah, you can't go yet. No. Thank you so much. And I'll close the meeting, and I look forward to seeing everybody again at the board development session 27th of April and an open board on the 18th of May. Sorry? No, that's gone. So there we go. Thank you very much. Luncheon. Should we take 10 minutes for luncheon? Yeah. Grab and bring in, and we'll press on. Thank you so much. Oh, yeah. Yeah.